Hi, I'm Sierra, and I'm in the Anthropology 326 class. And for an extra credit assignment, we get to make a little video and show us making a recipe that we found from the Caribbean. So today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making Belizean powder buns. From some of the articles I was reading, these powder buns are kind of like a tradition at breakfast time. You can see them being eaten with like cheese and eggs, or you can have more of a desserty muffin bun, and that's kind of what I was reading. Is a lot of people like them with coconut. There are recipes that call for raisin. The one I actually have here calls for raisins, but I'm not a huge fan of raisins, so I'm just going to substitute that for the coconut shreds. The recipe doesn't look too hard, so we'll see how it goes. I pre-measured everything. So I have everything pre-measured out here, as you can see. So this one is going to be the sifted flour. And then over here we have the other dry ingredients. We have the shredded coconut, we have some baking powder, some brown sugar. I just like brown sugar better than white sugar. We have some nutmeg and then some cinnamon. Over here we have the wet ingredients, which consists of 2 eggs, vanilla, and half a cup of coconut milk. It also said instead of coconut milk you can use evaporated milk, but I am a huge fan of coconut milk. It also calls for half a cup of butter. And so I'm going to try to position the camera and make sure that you can actually see what I'm doing. So bear with me. I also preheated the oven to 370 degrees like the recipe asked for. So now what the recipe says is you're going to take the sifted flour that we pre-measured, the 2 cups of the all-purpose flour, and you're going to mix in that half a cup of margarine with your hands. And what we're looking for is a very crumbly consistency, so hopefully I can do that. We got all the butter in there. And I decided to pre-measure all of the ingredients because any cooking show I've ever seen, they always have everything measured out, and I just feel like it's a huge time saver, and then I don't have to look super ridiculous making this video since I've never really made a cooking video before. So we're gonna go ahead. I washed my hands before, I tied my hair back because I have long hair and we're not trying to get that in the food. So we're gonna go ahead and start mixing. I feel like by doing this recipe, it's kind of cool. It kind of takes me back to my childhood. My mom is a phenomenal cook, and she would always let me help her. And this kind of, the consistency that I am mixing right now, it kind of reminds me of making homemade egg noodles. It's not as sticky, but I'm sure it will probably get a little bit more sticky. Definitely turning into that crumbly texture like the recipe said it would. So that's a good start. I have a feeling that this probably won't be enough for the whole class, so I might have to make 2 batches, but we'll see how it turns out. Alright, so I think it's pretty well mixed. It looks like all the flour and the butter is mixed, and it's definitely, I don't know, let's see if I can bring it over without making a huge mess. So the consistency and the texture is definitely that crumbliness that it was asking for. So we'll go ahead and kind of clean my hands off, and then we'll follow the next steps. So bear with me as I clean myself up a little bit. So next, what the recipe says is to go ahead and add in the other dry ingredients. So from here, we're gonna add in that brown sugar, which we have half a cup of, the half a cup of the shredded coconut. If you aren't a fan of coconut, you can go ahead and substitute that with raisins. I'm sure you could also substitute it with a few other things. And then we're gonna add the spices, so the nutmeg and the cinnamon. There's a teaspoon of each of those in there. And then we're gonna add that baking powder. So there is also 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So that's everything I have mixed in here. What I'm gonna go ahead and do is course what I'm looking for is never around, so I'm just going to use a fork. I'm sure it will work the same way. I'm going to first mix these dry ingredients separately so that when I do add it to my crumbly mixture, it's just a little more consistent and it's not sticking to the butter and the flour. So far these already smell phenomenal. The nutmeg has a really rich smell to it, and the brown sugar is very molassesy. The coconut, of course, huge fan of coconut, so that always smells delicious to me. And I love cinnamon. So I think these are going to be awesome. I hope that other people will enjoy them as well. Okay, so this is all mixed, so we're going to go ahead and add that to the other dry ingredients. Set that over there. So what I'm doing now, I'm just kind of rotating the bowl and making sure that we get a very nice mix of all the ingredients together so that somebody doesn't like bite into it and just get a huge chunk of cinnamon or nutmeg, which I don't think that would be like terrible, but we're not trying to do the cinnamon challenge here. Alright, so let me grab the phone real quick. I just want to show you what we have going on here. So we have the mixture of just the dry ingredients. We have the coconut, cinnamon, nutmeg, butter, flour. This smells good. I honestly would eat this myself just like this. But let's go ahead and see what happens next. Oh, the oven's preheated. So what we're gonna do now, the recipe says to beat the eggs, vanilla, and coconut milk. So I'm just gonna use the same fork because I am a huge fan of not wasting a bunch of ingredients or a bunch of dishes, because I don't want to have to do dishes later even. Oops, sorry, don't know what happened there. I don't want to do more dishes than I have to do. So I'm just gonna go ahead and mix those eggs, the vanilla, and the coconut milk together. I usually do everything by hand. I'm not a huge firm believer of like using an egg beater, and I can't afford one of those fancy KitchenAids. But my mom, growing up and everything, we always did everything by hand. I feel like it just adds that extra, like, I don't know, it just adds a little bit more love to it, as she used to say. So now what the recipe says is to go ahead and combine the wet ingredients with the dry ingredients slowly. The final dough should be moist and sticky, so let's hope for that. I always make a little crater in my dry ingredients and kind of mix and then create the crater again, add some more, keep mixing. My mom just taught me how to do it that way, so that's just kind of the habit that I've always been in. I'm sure that other people have other ways that work great too, but just what I was taught growing up. So now I'm gonna get a nice sticky mixture I'm hoping for. I was kind of nervous when I was going to make these because I wasn't sure if, like, I know that when my grandparents who live in Florida share recipes with me, sometimes their cooking temperatures are a little bit different because they're at a different altitude. So it's always kind of fun to play around and see what it is. So hopefully this one's not too far off. Most of the recipes that I was looking at were recreated in the United States. So I'm hoping that I have something close. Definitely looks sticky and moist. Smells delicious. I'll show you what we have going here. So this is the mixture so far. Smells really good. We'll set you back over here. So now what we're going to do is use a spoon to drop large spoonfuls on a well-greased baking sheet and sprinkle generously with coarse brown sugar. So I have my baking sheets here, as you can see. We just moved, so I couldn't find my big baking sheets, so I'm using these small ones, and probably have to do a couple loads. I guess a couple trays of them. So Now, and I don't think these have to look pretty, which, like, I'm all about things not looking pretty. Because as long as it tastes well, I don't think it needs to look pretty. So I'm just going to drop spoonfuls. I'm trying to make them small so there's enough for the whole class. Worst case scenario, we'll just have to make more. And by the smell of this, I don't think that this is something that I'm going to be upset about eating. Why I really like this recipe is a lot of the other recipes I was looking at, they were more like dinner recipes or like lunch recipes. I'm not a huge fan of like chicken. I grew up eating chicken, so I think it's just like one of those things that like once you've had it all the time, you kind of want to try something new. But I'm a huge carbs fan, so carbs are kind of where it's at for me, especially when it's like a sweet, yummy dessert kind of thing. So I was hoping that this breakfast food slash snack would be a really good alternative. And I feel like it's also different enough where other people in the class maybe might not have found this recipe. So we'll kind of have a variety in class on Thursday. Alright, so now it just says to add some like coarse brown sugar on top, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and put them in the oven, and I'm going to bake them at 370 for 15 to 20 minutes or until golden brown, so I'll kind of keep a look on that. At the very end of this recipe it says, perfect with a slice of cheese or enjoy with a cup of coffee. So maybe somebody will bring coffee tomorrow and we can enjoy these. Well, I'm Sierra again, and thank you for watching my cooking show.